Can you say friends, talking, nerdy? Close enough.
If your friends are nerdy and you are nerdy too, I want to talk to you. Friends Talking Nerdy.
Welcome to Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim the Nerd, and seated next to me we have a luxuriating Professor Aubrey. And this week at work, this past week actually, I had a canine friend come back from a long sickness.
Oh, really?
Yes. He had been gone for almost 2 months because he dealt with pneumonia.
Oh, poor thing.
Yeah, but he came back all smiles and everything. I was able to get a picture of him, and he looked like a 5-year-old, like that's just out of a doctor's office after getting a shot with a Band-Aid on its arm and a lollipop in its hand.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then
Excited to be back.
excited to be back. And then, of course, today he went back to his creepy 60-year-old man mounting thing because he isn't one to like get on top of another dog and start mounting away. What he will do is get up to the dog that he's interested in, sniff their butt, and then start moving his pelvis
While sniffing the butt.
while sniffing the butt. That's all I want. Give me that. Just give me that. Anyway. But that got me thinking
They're so
about...
gross.
Oh, they are. But I love them. Dogs aren't clever. They get ticks and fleas. They drag their asses and get Lyme disease. You have to train them pick up their crap on your knees. But cats are cunts.
Oh, the Cats Are Cons song, right?
Yes, Triumph the Insult Comic Dog, everybody. But that my canine friend coming back gave me a great idea in terms of a topic we can talk about this week, and it's like a 2-in-1. We both like animals, we both like music, so why not have our top 5 favorite songs about animals, right?
That's right. And there's lots of good songs about animals.
Yes, now we made sure to make our choices kind of as broad as possible. It's not like we're looking for, like a red-headed pheasant song, with that particular title or anything like that. There are a lot of ways you can interpret songs about animals, and that I think was the interesting part in getting these songs together.
I agree. It was fun to think back to all the animal songs because a lot of times animal songs are kind of cutesy, fun songs. Not all the time. And you chose some ones that definitely are not.
Yeah. But the cutesy fun ones, though, I think back to Andy Kaufman when he was trying to be a kid show host during a stand-up act, and he would do, and the cow goes moo, and the dog goes woof, and that's the way it goes. But then, when I had kids, of course, I had to twist it a little bit, and I goes, and the cow goes woof, and the cat goes moo, and the dog goes meow. And that would get my kids laughing each and every time.
Really?
Yeah, they loved it.
Oh, that's cute.
They may have been humoring me, but
Well,
yeah. Hopefully they remember that. But speaking of that, you have a song, since your songs are more kid-friendly, that you want to talk about and start us off with. How about you start?
okay, I will get us started. Now, this one was kind of a given. Like, it seemed to me the one that popped in my head immediately, and that was Hungry Like the Wolf. Duran Duran. Great song from a great band that was very popular in the 80s, but had a comeback. When was that? Like the 2010s?
No, they went off the radar near the end of the 80s, and then at the beginning of the 90s, they actually had a big comeback then. And then, as the 90s dragged on, I wouldn't say they didn't go from like playing arenas to like dive bars or anything like that, but they were playing theaters, and that's fine. I think in the 20s, the early 2000s, they may have had another hit as well.
Like that "Cry for Yesterday" song. That was like one of their newest.
Well, this song and a View to a Kill, the theme song they did to the James Bond movie, are really the only two Duran Duran songs I'm familiar with. I know they did a ballad in the 90s that if you sang it to me, I'd be like, oh, that. But yeah, I mean, it's like they were more palatable whiny British guys, but they were still whiny British guys to me.
And as someone who likes the Beatles, that's interesting, and the Rolling Stones, and the Who.
But they're not whiny British guys. Pete Townsend destroying his guitar is like, I don't like it. It didn't sound the way I wanted.
Huh. Well, interesting.
Keith Moon, call him whiny. Keith Richards, my God, that man should not still be alive, right? Hungry Like the Wolf is definitely a great song, though. It's interesting that you like that too, knowing how much you like lyrics, because the lyrics of that song are really nonsensical. If you really sit back and actually listen to what they're singing, it's just that even just in audio form, the song, everything together, just, you're dancing to it, you're moving around, but if you analyze the lyrics, you're like, what is he talking about?
Yeah. Do you remember any examples of that?
Of course I do. What are you, ridiculous? My goodness. I came prepared. I did my research.
Of course you did.
Yeah. In touch with the ground. I'm on the hunt. I'm after you. Smell like I sound. I'm lost in a crowd. And I'm hungry. Like the wolf. Straddle the line in discord and rhyme. I'm on the hunt. I'm after you. Mouth is alive with juices like wine. And I'm hungry. Like the wolf.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense at all.
But I think again, with the music added onto it, also with the delivery of the video as well, like it has a lot of polish on it that is making you ignore, it's like South Park. If you watch South Park with the volume all the way down and just look at the animation, especially from the early years of the show, you're like, ew. But everything together makes it an amazing show. Mm-hmm. So yeah, may I goof on these lyrics? Sure. I think anybody honestly has every right to critique them, but being that it's part of such a classic song, I mean, they've gone to the bank many times over, and they were the ones too that that inspired ZZ Top to start playing with a synthesizer in the 80s.
I know. Isn't that cool?
Yeah, I mean, and I really respected that from ZZ Top, because apparently Billy Gibbons, the big creative force of that band, went to a Duran Duran concert, and after the show met up with the band backstage, and they were kind of confused initially as to why he was there, and he was like, no, you guys are doing the blues, you're just doing it with synthesizers. Tell me how you do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the mark of a great musician,
Oh, sure. That humility
and willingness to try new things, because I think of one of their contemporaries, Lynyrd Skynyrd. Like, Lynyrd Skynyrd went from having lead singers that were wearing shirts proclaiming the joys of veganism to now sharing the bill with Kid Rock with no original members of the band. So yeah, I
didn't know that about Lynyrd Skynyrd.
Yeah, they're still touring.
No. The
the lead singer?
The vegan thing.
Yeah, they did have some progressive causes back in the day that they supported, but
when was the day?
Like 70s.
Okay, 70s.
Yeah.
Interesting. And so they all got replaced eventually.
Yeah, one time in a tragic way, in the late 70s, or the mid to late 70s, they were involved in a plane crash, and a number of the band ended up being killed in that. So, That was one thing, but they did have other members that were still alive that did take up the name Leonard Skinner and continue touring. And recently, within the past couple of years, the last remaining living original member of Leonard Skinner died. So the band that is still touring casinos around the world, has no original members. But they're not the only ones that do that. Like the Temptations, I believe, there's still a group calling themselves the Temptations that are officially licensed by the estate of everybody that used to be in the Temptations, but they were not the original Temptations. But anyway, Duran Duran, Hungry Like the Wolf, they're great. Also love the fact that a couple of the band members did a side project called The Power Station with one Mr. Robert Palmer.
I remember the Power Station.
Yes. Yeah, before Addicted to Love, according to you, one of the worst videos ever made.
Totally.
Yes. All right, shall I go on with my first choice?
Yes, please.
All right. Have you heard?
About the bird?
Yes, the bird is the word. Surfing Bird from the Trashmen. Classic garage rock song from the 60s. And like many people my age, I discovered it thanks to Family Guy.
Really?
Yeah.
I discovered it because of Platoon.
Aha. Okay. For me, it was Family Guy. The episode I Dream of Jesus. Peter, they go into a 50s restaurant, and all of a sudden, Surfing Bird starts playing, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's my all-time favorite song!" And then he starts, "Bird, bird, bird, the bird is a word. Chris, don't you know about the bird? Make everybody knows that the bird is a word." And then throughout the entire episode, he just replays the song and replays this song, and they even had a scene where he's in his kitchen singing it, and then pretends to have like a stroke or something, and is on the ground, and Brian's like, "Oh my God, are you okay?" Papa uma ma, Papa uma ma, Papa uma ma. He gets up and does that, starts dancing, and then you have Stewie, who's in his high chair. He's just looking dead ahead, straight ahead. And then he pulls out a gun and puts it in his mouth.
Oh my God.
But this is a fun song. Is it the greatest song ever made? Of course not. Anybody saying so is lying to you. But it is still very fun. Like, you cannot help but dance a little bit when you're hearing this song. It's even if you're doing it like somewhat cynically or sarcastically, it's still a goofy, fun song, and I love it. Now, you saw it in a very serious film. What do you think of Surfing Bird?
I really loved it. It was a lot of Platoon was juxtaposing young guys having a good time with the seriousness of what was happening around them and what they were being asked to do. So it was this moment of levity in what was really a bummer of a movie.
Yeah,
but
Oliver Stone.
So well acted. Yeah, from Oliver Stone. Yeah, depressing from Oliver Stone.
Yeah, the time he did a wacky comedy was Natural Born Killers. Well, I'm glad you like that song. And two, like, I think those types of songs kind of show, I don't like gatekeepers in music. There are plenty of people who think, classical music is the only real music out there. When you have three chords, you're not really playing music. It's like, shut up. It is still music. Is it the high arts? By no means. It's Surfing Bird,
Right.
But anyway, unless you have anything else you want to say about Surfing Bird, I want to hear your next choice.
Okay, well, my next choice is one that I think you're going to really like, which is Blackbird from the Beatles. Do you like that song?
Of course.
Of course, yeah. Would you say it's one of your, top 10 or?
No.
No. It's one of the ones that has been covered a lot and like coffee houses and stuff. Do you know what I mean? Like amateur musicians playing Blackbird. I think it's kind of hard to play, but so it's kind of a like, look, I can play this kind of song.
Beyonce covered it on the Cowboy Carter album.
Oh, wow. How was it?
I thought it was pretty good.
Cool.
Yeah.
I'll have to check that out. So yeah, Blackbird. I think it's, honestly talking about a blackbird.
No.
Okay.
But this is something I only found out very recently myself. There was a point in time to where I would have agreed with you, but this was thanks to finding this out about from the Cowboy Carter album, actually.
No.
He wrote it for, I believe her name is Ruby Bridges, that young black student who the National Guard had to bring to school in, I believe, Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
And because in England, like there are nicknames for women, there are nicknames for men. One of the nicknames for women in England is Bird.
Yep.
And, I guess there was a picture that he saw that he was really inspired by, Blackbird singing in the dead of night. He wanted to acknowledge the fact that what, this woman was going through was really hard, but, her spirit is what will ultimately win over in the end. I guess, if that makes sense, a very simplistic way of looking at it. But, and again, this is just something I've come to understand only very recently myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really makes a lot of sense.
But to
And how did you learn that?
Again, reading interviews about, why Beyonce picked the songs for Cowboy Carter.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, but that's the beauty of the song, too, and the fact that you can interpret it as a song about an actual blackbird.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the beauty of the Beatles' writing, is the fact that depending on the eye of the beholder, it can mean something for anybody, but not be so vague that you're like, huh?
Right, it has meaning.
Yes.
And in this case, has multiple meanings.
Exactly. From one of their best albums, the White Album.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, I think that album was probably the beginning of the end for that band, if only because of George Harrison's increased musical output. If George had just focused on only playing the guitar, just like Ringo was only focused on playing the drums, then John and George could have probably kept everything together a lot longer. But, when you have a talent like George Harrison had talent for writing songs, and you were only getting one, maybe two songs on the album, if you're lucky, that was a mixture that was going to be combusting at some point.
Yeah.
But we are lucky we got what we did. Some of the most beautiful music in the 20th century ever created.
Absolutely.
All right. Shall I go on?
Yes, please.
Speaking of the Beatles, this band, in this song / album, it's the title song from the album, inspired John Lennon to go back into the studio to make what was his last album, Double Fantasy. Rock Lobster from the B-52s. When I first heard this song, I think it was just off of streaming. Before hearing this song, I was only familiar with the B-52s with like Love Shack.
Right.
And for a while I didn't even get that song. But hearing Rock Lobster, just how silly and goofy, and it's basically the guitar player had that riff, but he was only doing it as a joke, and then the band took it upon themselves to write a song befitting of that riff. And it's like 6 or 7 minutes long. I love the bit at the end where Fred Schneider and Kate Pearson are going back and forth, here comes a stingray, what, here comes a manta ray, blah. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. The lyrics, apparently they have meaning, but Fred Schneider, I guess the guy who wrote the song, has never opened up about what the meaning could potentially be. And of course, since people love to speculate about the sex lives of famous musicians, some people have read like some homosexual meaning into it as well, which, again, if the person who wrote the song is not saying what's in it, you can speculate. Everybody speculates, I guess, but you just can't assume it's that.
Sure. But it's interesting. It's fun to speculate. That's why people do it.
Damn right. This was also one briefly mentioned on Family Guy. when they had what they call it, Iraq lobster. It was like a lobster with a turban on, and Peter was playing the guitar.
Oh, in Iraq.
Yeah.
Lobster.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Anyway, B-52s, Rock Lobster. What do you think?
Love it. Love B-52s. Love Rock Lobster. I saw them in concert
Mm.
at the very old gym at my college. And they were so great. I remember dressing up, in a sort of 60s dress, like they dressed,
Yeah.
and dancing a lot and having a really good time.
Yeah, honestly, Rock Lobster is what gave me much more appreciation for what they had to offer as a band. And now I absolutely love Love Shack. Rome, the Cosmic Thing album is one hell of an album.
Mm-hmm, it's great.
And just how as personalities, all of them together, just unique, campy, kitschy, 50s, 60s era, vibe and all that stuff, all put together. It's wonderful fun.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful fun.
And do we know what's up with them lately?
I believe they are officially done with touring.
Okay.
I don't know if that means that they're not going to continue within studio stuff too, but yeah, because like a couple years back they did come through Portland on their farewell tour.
That would have been cool to see.
Yeah, it would have. I didn't though. Drat.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah. Anyway. Oh, that would have been interesting though. Like if we'd both been like, oh yeah, I went too, and then we had a story about like bumping into somebody we absolutely were annoyed at the Moda Center to find out it was.
That would be like a rom-com, man.
Like Meg Ryan and Tom
The
Hanks type of deal.
ultimate rom-com right there. You should write that. You should write a script of that.
There you go. There's my $1 billion movie. Anyway,
Exactly.
what's your next choice?
I'm sure I would love to read a love scene. I mean, I know you've written love scenes, but
No, I really haven't.
well, you want to.
I'm not good at it. Like in my first book, there is a love scene, but what happens is like it's the type of it's like what happens in film occasionally, where like you're like, oh yeah, we're gonna do it, and then the characters walk into a room and the door closes, and then it changes to like hours later and they're done.
Uh-huh.
Because even literary wise, like I don't see the sense in for what I like to write, at the very least, in terms of writing like page after page after page of the physical act that is going on, and try to come up with imagery to make it flow more than like somebody writing down like a captioning of the action that's happening on a screen,
Yeah. I mean, I agree that it's the romance novel level thing.
Yeah. Yeah, she heaved her bosom in his face and slapped him with her. I don't know.
I mean, I think there's very sophisticated erotica, but this is not the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of that, what's your next choice?
Speaking of that, my next choice is Meat is Murder.
By the Paragon of Virtue, Morrissey.
That's right. And it is off the last Smith's album.
The last one?
I think so.
All right.
If you don't know, it is a song about veganism, really, and why to be vegan because of the suffering, because of the suffering, mostly, of the animals. And so the video for the song and the way that it was performed, has it playing in the background, animals being eviscerated, like animals being butchered and all kinds of stuff like that. It's a powerful song if you are into that sort of thing.
If you
It's kind of really cool. It starts off really quiet and then it gets really more and more frenzied as you are exposed to all of the
meat is murder. Something like that.
no.
Okay.
It was on it was just their second studio album. I knew that. Okay, it's the record by the same name, second studio album, and it did really well on the charts. It was number 10 on the Billboard 200, much higher on the number 1 in the British charts, but number 10 on the Billboard 200.
They kicked Tiffany's ass. No, I'm kidding. Okay.
They did kick Tiffany's ass. I wonder what the comparison might be between them and Wham, though, which I think of is more there.
I think Wham sold a lot more records. I mean, that would have been comparing like Pearl Jam to the Backstreet Boys or New Kids on the Block in the 90s. Like, they're going for two different audiences.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, duh. You know that, but it's just that the Pearl Jam audience is not going to be as big as the, teenage audience. Even though, having said that, the teenage audience is only going to be there for a very short time compared to somebody like a Pearl Jam or, the Smiths or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, the Smiths is a better band, right? So their music persists. Just like Pearl Jam's a better band than New Kids on the Block, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, kind of similar thing with the Smiths, I think.
Yeah.
Deep. They're deep, man.
That's right.
And this was, when Johnny Marr and Morrissey were really getting along and doing, some really great songwriting. It's just unfortunate that they ended up breaking up so soon.
On the one hand, if you're a fan of somebody like that, I've talked about it with Eddie Murphy before. Like, I'm a fan of his early stand-up work, and while I would love to see him go back on the stage and do more stand-up work, I would almost not want him to, for the sake of, in terms of it not being good. I mean, Look what happened to George Lucas with the prequels, I mean, he had a lot of goodwill coming into the prequels, and once all three of those came out, I mean, it was a few years later that he was like, hey, Disney, you got $4 billion? Okay, here you go.
I like that voice.
And my George Lucas voice.
Oh, yes.
Faster and more intense. That was the stage direction he would give to the actors.
Oh, really?
On A New Hope, the original Star Wars.
Faster and more intense. And he would deliver it in that fashion.
Yeah, just like this. But Anthony Daniels, made a little quip in that Empire of Dreams documentary, imagine C-3PO faster and more intense. I couldn't. But back to the song, I think, as a meat eater, I'm not going to... I would be hypocritical if, I came out and said, you shouldn't eat meat at all and try and go ahead and support this. But how I can support it is, I think it is imperative that if you do like eating meat, try to fight to make sure that the meat is, being prepared in a healthy way. Like, think of chickens with all the steroids that they get pumped with to have thicker breasts. I mean, these chickens are not able to walk, and they're all, shoved into very small living areas by the hundreds of thousands, depending on where the farm is at. Think of pigs. This is something I learned from a podcast recently about how animals are treated and how meat is made, I guess. It was a political podcast, and they talked about how, I know how you are, so I'll say this as obliquely as possible. There are certain medical procedures that are done on the pigs that are done in a certain way because the farmers don't have to pay the extra money to make sure that the pigs...
I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't need to talk about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's very common on the farm.
Yeah, and think of all the cortisol and the stress that can go through anybody's body or any animal's body or something like that, and that I think that there are studies that have come out that say that under extreme stress, if you're eating the meat of animals that have been under extreme stress, it could affect your health. So as a meat eater, you would think that would be something you would want to push for, to make sure it's as fast of a death as possible and that the animal animal in question is, living the best possible life it can.
Just like anything, people don't want to change their behavior. And I eat meat. I should eat more of a plant-based diet. I think we can all benefit from both economically and health-wise, as well as ethically.
Yeah.
From eating a more plant-based diet. Now, does that mean I'm going to get the Impossible Burger? No, because I have never liked, even when I was vegan, even when I was vegetarian, I have never liked stuff that pretends to be meat. I would rather it just be like a black bean croquette sandwich. Like, it doesn't have to be something that is imitating a beef hamburger. Yeah, so there you go. Song about animals.
That's right. Speaking of animals, shall I go on to my next choice?
Yeah, please.
All right. This is a mellow love song from a group called Wasp. Lead singer, lead songwriter Blackie Lawless wrote this in probably similar circumstances that Marvin Gaye wrote What's Going On, or, Let's Get It On, or whatever. Anyway, Wasp was one of the early 80s glam metal bands in the era when glam metal was trying to shock. Because people think back to my era, the later 80s. Yours, I think, was more the mid 80s. The later 80s was like your Def Leppards and stuff like that. Fine music for what it was, Poison, but it was much more palatable to the masses. When you have a song from Wasp called "Fuck Like a Beast," Animal. Fuck Like a Beast. That's their first single that they released.
Really?
Yeah.
Ever?
Yeah.
Wow.
Apparently, how they got away with it is that they put the single into black bags with the name of the band on there. Blackie Lawless was in a band with one Nikki Sixx before Nikki Sixx formed Motley Crue.
Nice.
So, and if you look at there is a documentary on Paramount Plus, I think it's called Nothing But a Good Time, that does kind of detail the history of the glam metal bands from the 80s. And a lot of these guys knew each other. A lot of these guys were already friends and stuff like that.
I mean, they were into the same thing, right?
Yeah, they all played the same type of clubs, had the same drug dealers, slept with the same women.
Yeah.
Real healthy stuff,
Yeah, live fast.
Yeah, but Blackie Lawless was inspired by a National Geographic special where two lions were going at it.
Lions going at it is interesting to see in a documentary.
Yeah, because lions, when they do mate, they're not tender lovers.
No, I mean, have you ever had like an alley cat having in heat and having a number of gentleman callers all at the same time?
Hello.
It seems awful. It seems awful what happens to the female of the species. Because they get their neck bitten and held down and...
Maybe they like BDSM, you don't know.
And then the other thing is the lion's testicles are quite large. And so when you see them going at it, you're like, whoa.
Yeah.
I bet in person, I mean, it's,
Yeah, you just want to stand up and go, bravo, clapping.
No, I mean, I don't think having large testicles is like something to be excited about. I mean, everybody's got different testicles. I'm just saying that lions have big ones per their body size.
Yeah.
I mean, not nearly as big as a whale penis, for example.
Dork.
What's a dork?
Whale penis, that's what they're called.
They're called dorks?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Hence the name dork. That's where dork comes from.
It comes from a whale penis?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
The more you know.
You are chock full of information.
Yeah, and look where it got me.
Yeah. That's great.
Yeah, and I know you're not a fan of this song, so I'm not going to ask you to comment on it. While I know you did hear it once, I think you were in a mental state of, of putting your fingers in your ear and going la 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 in terms of not hearing it. Now Blackie Lawless, when he did tour, he was inspired by Alice Cooper and Kiss, and so he had this codpiece made up that was a saw blade, a circular saw blade that would go from like the front of him to the back of him, so he would have this circular saw blade and gyrate on stage. Lots of fake blood involved and all that stuff, something all the kids would enjoy.
Wow.
Yeah, again folks, the beginning of the glam rock era was more of a shock element compared to what it became at the end.
Yeah, it definitely mellowed at the end, like there, every rose has its thorn kind of situation.
Yeah, and that every rose has its thorn in a lot of ways. Along with Home Sweet Home from Motley Crue was honestly the beginning of the end of hair metal.
Yeah,
because at that point, like, it just became focused on the ballads, which is why I think in a way because at the tail end of country, at the tail end of hair metal, when grunge exploded,
yeah,
that was also the time when country music like Garth Brooks started hitting it big, and a lot of his stuff was the ballads that in a Poison's hand could have been like a hair metal ballad.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think country ended up taking over the mantle of hair metal for that particular type of audience.
Yeah, it seems like they got that demographic.
Yeah.
The sort of dudes.
Yeah, real bright intellectual types.
Right.
Yeah, they drink their paps with their pinky out.
Well,
All right, how about you go on to your next choice?
Okay, my next two choices actually are from Mr. Bob Dylan.
But choice number
one is Man Gave Names to All the Animals. And this was on Slow Train Coming, which was a 1979 album. And the last time Bob Dylan played this song in public was 1991. So, like, super rare song to hear. And it was, I think, a time when Bob Dylan was doing a lot of spiritual searching and sort of went kind of super Christian and started playing the electric guitar and sort of doing things that people didn't expect him to do. And so I think this is, it comes directly from the Bible, this idea that man named all the animals. And then it goes on and talks about, Adam and Eve and the ultimate fall from the Garden of Eden.
It's all the woman's fault. Huh?
No, actually, in this version, when the snake shows up, it's over. So that it doesn't accuse women of being the reason.
If anybody can reboot the Bible, it's Bob Dylan.
Hey, man. I'm just saying he didn't glorify that sort of
Well, that's good.
thing. Yeah.
That's good.
One of those songs that people don't like, it's the same album that the song Serve Somebody is on, which is also a Christian song talking about serving God. You have to serve somebody, which is the other worst song of Bob Dylan's. So I don't agree. On Serve Somebody, I do agree. It's one of the worst songs. But I mean, it just goes to show how great Bob Dylan is, that his worst songs are better than many people's best songs.
I've not heard this particular one myself. I've not heard the other choice as well, so I cannot comment upon the quality of the song or lack thereof, but I think if I remember correctly, like, he's had an album come out once every couple of years since he started in the 60s.
That's right.
That is a lot of output.
Mm-hmm.
If any, I would compare him to comedian George Carlin in a lot of ways, because like George Carlin could have easily, rested on his laurels and, just traveled around the country doing the same set over and over again. But the last 20 years of his career, each and every year, he made it a point to create new material.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's how you change. And, for Dylan, I'm sure, Dylan and Carlin both experienced, waves of massive popularity and waves of them not having too many people really interested at that particular time. But that's how you change as an artist, right? It's not about finding the one thing that works and then driving it into the ground. The whole art of creation, of creating the whole thing of work of creating art is to create art. You keep doing it. You keep doing it.
I'm not an artist. And I've never followed the artist way, if people remember that book from the 90s.
I don't.
It was a self-help book.
I remember Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I remember that.
Yeah. I mean, there were some really great ones in the 90s.
Yeah.
There's a really good podcast, actually, that debunks stuff that was on that show.
Yeah. When you're writing a song and making lots of money off of it, like Dylan did, is not the same as someone making a car bumper. It's a different deal. And when you're writing a song, you're speaking to that particular audience at that particular time that you're releasing it. The mark of a great song is one that can speak to people over, many different time periods.
Mm-hmm.
And not everybody, can have that. And I think for an artist, really, you have to change with the times. I mean, imagine if Bob Dylan in 1979 was still trying to do the just him and the guitar and the harmonica, the same setup that he did in the early 60s. I mean, Peter, Paul, and Mary were still touring, so it's not like he would have been broken working at a grocery store.
I mean, think of Garth Brooks. Like, how did Garth Brooks change? Or, like, there's a number of people who just do the exact same thing year after year after year after year after year after year after year.
Would it shock you, though, to find out that at the University of Oklahoma, Garth Brooks majored in marketing?
No, it wouldn't surprise me to learn that.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, and I mean, country is a unique art form musically because there is a large portion of that audience that does prefer the same thing over and over again. But even that is different for people. Like the same thing over and over again from my mom's era would be different than us, would be different than like my kids listening to country today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it takes longer for that change to happen, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So good on Mr. Dylan and tying it back to Bob.
Yeah.
Yeah, since we're on first name basis and all that.
Yeah, Bob.
That's right.
That's right.
Any other thoughts on man gave names to all the animals?
No, I think that we've discussed it fully.
All right, how about I dive in my next choice?
Let's do it. Let's shake it down.
All right, this was released in 1982.
Okay.
And was the main theme song for Rocky III.
Eye of the Tiger.
Eye of the Tiger, Survivor. They actually got most of the lyrics from the script. Sylvester Stallone provided them with the script for the movie, and have Rocky's trainer Mick, you get the eye of the tiger, Rock, and a lot of the cliches that you hear in a particular song come directly from his script, but it's bombastic, it's over the top, and then when added to the visuals of Rocky 3 to make it look like America was having an orgasm in the 80s, like it was just like, yeah!
Oh, yeah.
Now I love the dun, 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 dun. I mean, that's a great riff and all that, but then, rising up back on the street, just the singer. I mean, I
like that part.
Yeah, it just like it's just a weird little dichotomy of like dun, 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 great guitar riff and rising up, I the tiger.
Now, what other hits did what is it called? Survivor have?
None.
Yeah.
I mean, this was their big thing. If there's anybody out there that does like their music, not knocking the band, not, the only song I've heard from them is this one. So if they got other stuff, great, but the fact is the history books will just show that they had the one big hit, but it's still a hit we're talking about in 2025.
Yeah, that's true.
So that
And as we always say, these people are making a living
exactly.
doing art.
Speaking of that, though, Survivor, the band actually sued Survivor, the TV show.
Really?
Yeah, because when that show first came out, it was an entertainment property, just like Survivor, the band was an entertainment property. So, similar to what Apple Computers did with Apple Records, once they finally had the Beatles work on like iTunes and whatnot, they essentially licensed the name Survivor to the TV show, but said you can't release any music.
Mm.
And off the top of your head, you're like, fair deal. What would Survivor have to do with making music anyway, right?
Right.
Within the first couple seasons of Survivor, they released a soundtrack album.
Whoa.
So yeah, the band Survivor sued. I think it was one of those situations to where they settled it out of court, of
Sure.
course. So I'm sure they've got a pretty penny and all that. Which, yeah, it's the joke of the legal system right there, folks. Like, everybody is quick to say, why doesn't this person sue? Why doesn't this person sue? When the person you are contemplating suing has a lot more money than you, there's only so far you can go.
Yeah. If you don't have the money to pay a lawyer, a good lawyer.
Yeah.
The chances of you winning your civil case are quite slim.
Yeah. Yeah, they're just lucky it wasn't in the days of, let's take it to arbitration, yay. Anyway.
Well, there's still a lot of arbitration going on.
Yeah. Probably more now than ever, but Eye the Tiger, though, for all the bad that I've said about it, I still like that song. It's one on my playlist. I like it.
It's a carousing song.
I mean, it's one of those perfect songs, too, that, like, if you are, like, working out or even just doing something like doing the dishes, it can pump you up and kind of get you going to complete that task. And the world needs more music like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you have any other thoughts, how about you dive into your last choice with Mr. Zimmerman?
All right. Bob Dylan again, and this is a really interesting song. It's Froggy Went in a Courtin', and it's actually a traditional song that they believe originated in the 1540s and was about, the kings and queens and stuff. Like Froggy represented some monarch and Miss Mousy represented another.
Like Gulliver's Travels. Gulliver's Travels was a political commentary, but that political commentary was lost over time.
Right, exactly. So, and it's been done by many, many people just in the modern era and, had been done by probably thousands of people. And it was recorded by Bob Dylan in 1992, which was the year I graduated from high school. And it was on his 28th album, Good As I've Been to You. It had 16 songs on it, all written in the 1990s. So this one was not written by Bob Dylan. It was interpreted and arranged by Bob Dylan. But it's great. Froggy goes and falls in love with Miss Mouse. And so it's about Frog trying to convince Miss Mousy to marry him.
Interspecies love.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Anyway, have you ever heard it?
Nope.
No, you never heard it. Well, we'll have to listen to these songs.
It'll be on the playlist. You can check it out in the show description, folks.
Nice.
Yeah, you can rock out to Animal, Fuck Like a Beast, and Froggy Went a Courtin'.
Yeah, and, give us a social media statement of what you think.
Yeah.
Whether it's...
Tim is deranged. What's wrong with his musical choices?
Yeah, just let us know how you feel about it.
Yeah. As always, this is a song that even though I have not heard it, I can say this. I have a lot of respect for him for continuing the tradition of acknowledging the fact that other people wrote that song. I've talked about this many times. Led Zeppelin has a notorious history of taking songs that were somewhat in the public domain, or maybe they were even in the public domain, like In My Time of Dying, but claiming it as theirs.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not comfortable with that. I mean, I still like Led Zeppelin songs, don't get me wrong. Me listening to their songs on a streaming service is not going to buy them a new jet. But it's made me, over the years, listen to their music a lot less. Whereas someone like Dylan, who a lot of albums, so has a lot of good stuff and a lot of bad stuff, but at the very least, he's still respecting, other artists when, he does cover a song. He's not trying to say, this is my own original.
Right, totally.
Yeah.
And he, is probably after your own heart in that he has been so prolific. An artist who is still arting.
Damn right.
A lot.
Yeah, I guess he's coming to the Cascade Amphitheater as well with Willie Nelson in the Outlaw Music Tour.
I know, I have heard this, and it does sound enticing, doesn't it?
Yeah, Alison Krauss, I believe, maybe there. My God, any female artist I halfway have some interest in, you're like, oh, God, how dare you? They may as well have penises.
No, I mean, I've seen Bob Dylan twice. I've seen Willie Nelson, I think, 3 times. So
I want to see Alison Krauss 0 times.
I've seen Alison Krauss open for someone at some point along the way, for sure. And at the time, I didn't hate it, and I don't hate it now. It's actually really fine. I just really got into this one album, and so it's very of the moment, and I don't like hearing the songs off of it because it puts me back in that moment.
I get that. It's like Pink Floyd, The Wall for me.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Pink Floyd, great band, but a little too moody. You talk about whiny British guys. Life is bad. It's bad being a rock star. They give me drugs. I have lots of women. My gosh.
Yeah.
Not to mock that lifestyle. There's stress with any lifestyle, right?
You just adjust. I mean, humans adjust.
Exactly. Well, how about I dive into my last choice?
Sounds great.
All right. This is one I heard in either 94 or 95 at the tail end of the first episode of the Beatles anthology TV documentary. Free as a Bird.
I don't know that I know that one.
You definitely know it. It's late as we record this, folks. So there have been plenty of times where it's late and I can't remember my name half the time. So we're old, forgive us, But Free as a Bird. What I loved about this was that this was like my first Beatles song, if that makes sense, because it debuted when I was, aware of it.
Really?
It didn't. It wasn't released in the 60s. I mean, they ended in 1970. I was born 6 years later, so all of their music up to the first anthology was already released and out in the public and out in the wild. Whereas Free as a Bird released in 94. Just a beautiful song. It's from the same tape that Yoko gave Paul, George, and Ringo that had Free as a Bird, Real Love, and Now and Then.
That's right. I knew that Now and Then had come from Yoko.
Yes. What's interesting, too, is that she did release an album of just Lennon with his home demos. And you can hear, like, the original version of these songs on there. Like, Now and Then, for instance, has additional verses that Lennon sang that don't get included in the final song. With Now and Then, there's, like, a portion at the early part of the song to where on the original tape, Lennon hadn't come up with the lyrics yet. So he just starts la, 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 kind of scatting along with the music. And then McCartney, when he came up, finished the song in 2023, he added lyrics then, and because he had so much experience singing harmony with John, was able to kind of make it sound all together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But Free as a Bird, like, I had tears rolling down my face when I saw that video, and when the anthology first came out, of course I had to buy it. It was not an album, though, that I had put on many, many times or had many repeat listenings for. It's more of a curiosity type of album than anything else. It's like if you're a fan of the Beatles, you want to listen to it, but you're generally just going to listen to it once. The first there were 3 anthology albums. The first one you could probably listen to a lot more because they did have a lot more of the concert.
Cream of the crop.
No, they had a lot more like concert footage.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas anthologies 2 and 3 was more studio outtakes or different versions of songs.
Mm-hmm.
Because as we saw in the Get Back documentary, they worked on their songs a lot. And there were plenty of times to where they recorded dozens and dozens of versions of the same song, but they may have like a different guitar solo. They may have a different, first chorus. They may have different harmonies, stuff like that. Like, I believe in the second anthology, they have a version of Taxman from Revolver, the album Revolver, that is almost identical to the song that ended up on the album. In fact, the George Harrison track was the vocal that they used for the song on the final album, but the McCartney and Lennon background vocals were different.
Mm-hmm.
So the anthology albums are a curiosity, and thanks to streaming, you don't necessarily have to listen to that curiosity to still enjoy the songs like Free as a Bird, but just beautiful song.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful song. Any thoughts on it?
I would like to listen to it again.
All right.
Let's listen to it again.
We will, I promise. Any other thoughts about animals?
No, it was fun. It was a fun topic.
I agree, and open-ended too, so it wasn't like you had to do like homework to come up with something like this. But I think having a theme like this allows us to be able to open up and tell stories.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So, all right. Speaking of telling stories,
why don't you tell us one?
Yes, recently it was announced that Amazon had bought out Eon Productions, which was headed by Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson, of their stake in the James Bond franchise.
Ooh.
This came upon the heels of a few months previous to where there had been an insider report, I believe, like in either Variety or The Hollywood Reporter, to where Barbara Broccoli was quoted as saying, everyone at Amazon were fucking idiots. And so apparently, Mr. Used Condom head Jeff Bezos, after coming across that article, made it known that, whatever it took financially, he wanted them out of the picture. And I guess it was enough money that made Barbara Broccoli and Michael Wilson say, here you go.
Yeah.
So the James Bond franchise is now in the hands of Jeff Bezos.
Wow.
And I'm scared. I've been a fan of the Bond franchise since I was a kid, not only of the films, but of the books as well, from Ian Fleming. And is it possible that they could still come out with great movies? Of course. Not denying that, and I'm not going to say it's not going to be something that if they did release a new movie, I would, boycott it for the rest of my life. But they don't have a good history, in my opinion, of knowing what creativity is. They're a major corporation, and the only reason that they purchase entertainment companies like this is to have product to sell on, their services. And that's not a good recipe for making great movies. Because what I can see happening now is that we'll get, new Bond movies, but we'll get a Bond prequel show. We'll get a Moneypenny show. We'll get a cartoon with M. We'll get books. We'll get comic books. We'll get video games. And yeah, they were doing some of that stuff already, but they're going to pull with the James Bond franchise, what Marvel, what Lucasfilm and Star Wars did after Disney took over that company, in terms of just releasing a lot of stuff and just overwhelming the market. And one thing I have come to respect about the Broccoli family and how they ran the Bond franchise was how they showed that patience can win over people in the long run. Because they easily could have gone, they could have gone the route of like a horror franchise, for instance, like the Nightmare on Elm Street films. All of their main films happened between 1984 and I believe 1992 was the latest one. So 8 years for like 6 or 7 films.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a lot. The Friday the 13th films, kind of the same thing. Saw, they virtually, within the first 5 of those films, had a film come out every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and after a while, law of diminishing returns, people end up losing interest. And, you know, I don't think Bond is dead, but I think with the fact that this family that had been in control of Eon Productions, you know, you know, since when their father, Albert R. Broccoli, owned it. And yes, the Broccoli family is responsible for the broccoli vegetable.
Wow, they go all the way back to the broccolis
Yeah,
of broccoli.
exactly. But
The male lineage came down through
vegetable, yeah.
her father, must have been.
Yeah, because I think broccoli, if I'm not mistaken, broccoli is a relatively newish vegetable, right?
I don't know. I mean, what do you mean by newish?
In terms of, it's not been something like corn that has been
Ancient.
ancient, that has been in historical records, that, you know, like the ancient Mayans or whoever, and I just, you know, pulled a name out of a hat for that one, you know, ate corn or did whatever with corn. But overall, I think this was bad, bad, bad. Billionaires just throwing money at a problem to make people go away, and the people that he's making go away are the people that actually knew how to run this franchise.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, who knows? Like, they may very well come up with some good Bond story that will interest me. I'm not saying they won't, but I'm going to be much more skeptical now than I was when the Broccoli's were involved.
Okay, I got some broccoli knowledge to throw down on you.
All right.
And that is that broccoli's been around for a really long time.
All right.
Like since before the Romans. And it originated into the in the Mediterranean in southern Italy. And it came from the wild cabbage plant and came to the United States through Italian immigrants.
All right, then.
There you go. So, the broccoli, her father was in direct male lineage with the Broccolis in Roman times.
Well, there you go. History.
Very few people can trace their ancestry back to, precisely Roman.
So,
I mean, obviously people lived in Rome.
yeah. So the next time you're eating broccoli, folks, you can thank us for that tasty bit of trivia.
Yes.
And a tasty vegetable, if cooked right.
If cooked correctly and with cheese sauce.
Yeah.
Or a hollandaise. A nice white sauce.
Or, at the very least, butter.
Yeah, butter. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Butter's good with everything.
Yes, butter.
So what do you think about the Bond news? I know you're not the biggest Bond fan in the world, but I think the Bond franchise is one of
The
those.
hatred of Jeff Bezos, though, kind of.
So this is it for you? No more Bond?
Well, I'm trying to go no Amazon at all. And it's been since maybe a week after the inauguration that I have not purchased anything from Amazon.
I thought you were going to say it's been a week since I purchased something.
No, I mean, it's been since January. It's pretty good.
I get it. I get it. I mean, and should you beat yourself up over if you have to at some point order something? No, but you are making the concerted effort to see if there are more local alternatives going to businesses that aren't run by reprehensible pieces of trash.
Yeah, and the only thing wrong with it is you can get the same prices, you can get the same products. The only difference is it's inconvenient.
Yeah.
You got to drive across town, or even Hankins Hardware is my local hardware store, and it is maybe 20 blocks away. Maybe more than that, like 30 blocks. I mean, it's just not very, 2 miles, I'd say. And maybe 4 miles, that is.
No, it's a little over 20 blocks from me walking to work, so.
Okay, so around 20 blocks, yeah. Why was I counting the blocks?
About the hardware store compared to
Hankins.
Amazon.
It's very close to here. But I have to go there and get the thing and then leave and go back. And with Amazon, you just order it and it shows up the next day on your doorstep. Very few times that I can't wait till the next day to get something, when it means I don't have to get my lazy ass up and go down to Hank's Hardware. But it's not that hard, you know? And I have the luxury of not having kids and not having lots of stuff going on that prevents me from spending time going to Hank's Hardware.
And we're in a pretty big city, too. I mean, the fact is that we do have the ability to get most everything that we would consider buying on Amazon at somewhere local.
Yeah, and either, specialty shops or like Mart, which is employee owned, Winco, which is employee owned. I think Grocery Outlet is employee owned.
Maybe.
I don't know for sure, but like those are local places that have good prices, that have a wide variety of products.
Right. So there you go. Were you ever a fan of the James Bond series, even if casually?
I like Sean Connery as Bond, and I've watched all the Sean Connery Bond films. I did not like Roger Moore, and I haven't liked any of the modern ones. So it's Sean Connery in the 60s for me.
Yeah. I mean, he was definitely great as Bond. Roger Moore kind of grew on me just because, like, especially the older I got, the more I could see that he realized he was being silly. But I loved how even when he realized he was being silly, he would still play it cool. Like, to me, the greatest opening bit of a Bond movie still has to be from The Spy Who Loved Me. And that's where, the whole ending bit is where Bond is being chased by, like, evil people skiing down a mountain. And then all of a sudden you see the mountain ends at the end of a big cliff. And then Bond skis off the cliff. He's fallen. He kicks off the skis and then opens up the parachute. And the parachute's the Union Jack. And and just...
They redid this for the Olympics. This was the opening gag at the Olympics, was somebody dropped out of a plane and had a big Union Jack, and it had a pre thing with the Queen, like actually the Queen and actually the guy that plays James Bond,
Daniel Craig,
pretending that there was some crisis that Craig was going to go solve.
Yeah, she's like, "Oh, Craigie, are you going to fix me problem?"
Something like that. Yeah, and then he jumped out of the plane, and there was the Union Jack, and he ended up in the stadium. It was pretty cool.
For me, I just love that series. I mean, they've had some good movies. They've had some really bad movies. Die Another Day has to be one of the worst Bond movies ever made. And that has one of my sentimental favorites, Pierce Brosnan, starring in it. Yeah, the theme song, to me, you're going to get a good Bond movie when the theme song's good.
Yeah.
And in Die Another Day with Madonna doing it, it was like, no, it's not good. It's not good. No. And they used too much CGI, like Bond, like parasailed off of an ice cliff that sank, and it was like a big tidal wave. And yeah, Bond does not do that. Yeah. But we'll see what the future holds. But yeah, fuck Jeff Bezos. He's a scumbag.
Total scumbag.
Yeah. Any other thoughts for our friends at home on such a positive note?
Nope.
Yep. Keep up the good fight out there, people. We're gonna need it.
Yep.
Each Monday we'll have something in this podcast space to entertain your ear holes. Until we meet again, we bid you adieu.
So long.
And remember, fuck like a beast. Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy
on YouTube Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify,
or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Goodbye, darling.